Okay, so we all go to the grocery store, right? We all see the prices, but like, have you ever thought about how much of what we buy actually comes from other countries?
Yeah, it's pretty amazing how interconnected the world is.
Like almost everything, right?
Totally. Even when we're talking about something as basic as groceries, there's a whole global network at play behind the scenes that affects what we pay for our food.
It really is.
And that's what we're going to dive into today.
Yeah,
We're going to be looking at some CNN data
exactly.
that shows just how much the U.S. relies on Mexico and Canada for our food.
And why this is extra relevant right now is because President Trump has proposed a 25% tariff on goods coming from these two countries,
Right.
which could totally change what we see in the grocery store.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, when you look at the big picture, the U.S. imports a lot of its food.
Right.
And get this, in 2024, almost 42% of all those agricultural imports came from Mexico and Canada.
Oh, wow.
That's a huge percentage.
Yeah, that's a massive chunk of our food supply.
It is.
So let's unpack this a little more. What does that reliance actually look like in terms of what we buy?
Well, let's say you love avocados on your toast or in your salads.
Of course.
Mexico is like this fruit and veggie powerhouse.
Yeah, they are.
They supply a huge amount of the produce that we enjoy year-round.
I mean, I was looking at the CNN data, and
Yeah.
it actually shows that in 2024, the U.S. imported over $10.8 billion worth of fruits and vegetables just from Mexico alone.
Wow.
That's huge.
That's a lot of avocados.
It is a lot of avocados,
Yeah.
and it kind of dwarfs the imports from other countries like Chile or Peru.
Yeah.
And I mean, with climate change and everything impacting growing conditions in the U.S., we're probably only going to become even more dependent on Mexican produce in the future.
I think that's a safe bet. Yeah.
Exactly.
So with Canada, it's a similar story, but they kind of dominate in different categories.
Right.
They're the kings of grain, livestock, and poultry.
Yeah.
So think like the beef for your burgers, the wheat for your bread.
All the essentials. And again, the numbers from CNN really highlight this. The graphic shows that over $8.6 billion worth of livestock and meat were imported from Canada last year, and grains weren't far behind at $6.4 billion.
It makes you think,
It does.
like, if we're this reliant on Mexico and Canada for our food,
Yeah.
what happens when those imports suddenly become 25% more expensive?
Right, because that's essentially what a tariff does.
Exactly.
So someone has to eat that cost.
Yeah.
Right? Like, who do you think it's going to be?
Unfortunately, it's probably going to be us, the consumers.
Yeah.
Grocery stores have really thin profit margins. They can't absorb those kind of price increases.
No, they can't.
So it gets passed on to us at the checkout.
It does. Okay, so let's imagine I'm walking through the grocery store. Everything looks the same, but the prices are all a bit higher.
Mm.
Like my avocados are suddenly like $1 more. The steak that I usually buy is a couple of dollars extra.
Yeah, it all adds up.
It does.
And it might not even be just those specific items. You know, these tariffs hit a lot of different products. You could see prices going up across the board, like a general increase in food prices that could affect your whole grocery bill and what you decide to buy.
So it sounds kind of bleak, but is there like a potential upside to all this?
I mean, one argument in favor of tariffs is that they can protect industries here at home.
Okay.
By making those imported goods more expensive. The idea is that it makes American-made products more competitive.
Right.
So in theory, this could lead to more jobs in those industries.
So it's like this trade-off then, right? Like
Yeah.
higher prices at the store now, but maybe some long-term benefits for parts of the U.S. economy.
That's one way to look at it,
Oh.
yeah. But we also have to remember that tariffs can have like unintended consequences. They
Right.
can mess with supply chains, create shortages, even lead to other countries putting tariffs on our stuff.
Oh, wow.
It's really complicated, like a web of cause and effect. It's hard to say for sure what'll happen long term.
So we've talked about how this could hit our wallets.
Yeah.
But I'm also curious about the why. Like, what's the real motivation behind these tariffs? Is it just about protecting American industries?
That's where things get a bit tricky. Remember, President Trump has used tariffs as a negotiating tactic before.
Right.
He's also talked about how he sees unfair competition from places like Mexico and Canada, especially when it comes to things like steel and pharmaceuticals.
So is this like about giving those specific industries a boost, or is it something bigger? Like, are we using tariffs as a way to pressure other countries or renegotiate trade deals?
Probably a bit of both, honestly. And it's important to think about the context here.
Okay.
We're talking about a North American economy that's totally interconnected. The U.S., Mexico, and Canada all rely on each other for tons of stuff, not just food.
Right. In fact, in 2024, Mexico was the U.S.'s #1 trading partner, and Canada was #3.
Huge.
And it's not just avocados and beef. We're talking cars, oil, electronics, the whole shebang.
Hmm.
The total trade value with Mexico alone was over $466 billion.
It's a lot. And that's why these tariffs could have ripple effects way beyond the grocery store. We might see problems with supply chains, changes in manufacturing costs, and a lot of economic uncertainty.
Yeah.
It's something to watch closely for sure,
Okay.
because the impact could be really significant.
It sounds like there's a lot going on here. Price hikes at the grocery store, potential problems for all kinds of industries, and this whole web of trade relationships hanging in the balance.
Yeah.
So what does all this mean for our listener who's just trying to, figure out their weekly grocery shopping?
I think it really highlights how important it is to stay informed.
Right.
You can't just assume everything will work itself out or just accept rising prices. We need to understand what's happening and think about how our choices as consumers fit into all of this.
It makes me wonder if maybe this will lead to some changes in how people shop for groceries. Will we see more people looking for local options?
Possibly.
Like maybe a comeback for farmers markets or a bigger focus on seasonal produce?
Yeah, it's definitely possible. If those imported goods get a lot more expensive, it could be a chance for local producers to step in and fill that gap. We might see people being more aware of where their food comes from and choosing to support local businesses more.
It could even change dinner table conversations, right? Like families not just talking about what they're eating, but also the economic and political stuff that put that meal on their plates.
That's an interesting thought. It shows how something as simple as grocery shopping is actually tied to global events and political choices. We're all part of this big system, and understanding those connections can help us make better decisions.
So to wrap up our deep dive today,
Yeah,
we've seen how much Mexico and Canada contribute to keeping American grocery stores stocked,
for sure.
and how President Trump's proposed tariffs could really impact what we pay for those everyday items.
Absolutely.
We've also uncovered some of the reasons behind these tariffs.
Right, from trying to protect certain industries here to using them as leverage in trade negotiations on a global level.
But I think the most important thing we've learned is that what happens out there in the world can have a real effect on our everyday lives.
Yeah,
Right down to what's in our shopping carts.
I think that's a great point.
So here's a final thought for our listeners to chew on. If food prices do go up because of these tariffs, how will that affect what people eat?
Hmm.
Will we see people choosing cheaper options that maybe aren't as healthy? Or could this lead to a movement towards more food security and people trying to be more self-sufficient?
Those are some really interesting questions. It just goes to show how important it is to stay engaged and curious and keep asking those deep dive questions as we try to make sense of this ever-changing world. So the next time you're at the grocery store, take a second to think about all the global forces at play and the choices you have as a consumer. Because even the simplest things can be full of amazing connections and insights just waiting to be discovered.